Tell me your name, where you live, and how old you are.
My name's Gary Deere Jr. I live in Jamestown, Ohio. I'm 71 years old.
And tell me where you were on the day of the Xenia tornado in '74.
I was coming home from work on Old Dayton Yellow Springs Road
And you were in Fairborn, right?
in Fairborn, about a mile from my parents' home, and got into a horrible hailstorm to where I had to actually stop because it was coming down that hard. And I'm in a convertible. Not a real good place to be. But as soon as it slacked up to where it's just raining, I went on to the house. When I got there, there was a page come over the scanner that all the Fairborn volunteers, police volunteers, was to report to the Fairborn Police Department immediately.
So tell me about that organization. That was PACT, right?
And it was a public communication action team.
Okay.
And we basically were CBers that worked with the police department on watching out for storms, that kind of stuff when it would come up, watching buildings at night, that kind of thing. So they called, and I went downtown Fairborn. Sergeant Klitsch was the sergeant on duty. There was a bunch of us there. He put as many of us as they could get in the cruisers, and we headed for Xenia.
And what time of day was this?
About 4 o'clock, 4:30, somewhere around in there.
It happened in like 3:20 or 3:30
Yeah.
or something like that.
It was just after the schools had let out.
Okay.
And anyway, when we got to the edge of Xenia, then you started seeing all the destruction from this tornado. Now, they were briefing us in the cruisers while we're going down there and telling us what we was going to be doing.
So this is volunteer
This is all volunteer.
police support.
And so they dropped us off at the sheriff's department. A deputy came out and pulled me to the side. He said, "I understand you do maintenance with electrical and stuff like that." And I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Well, I'm going to put you with a fireman. We're going to have you go through the buildings, make sure the buildings are empty, kill the power, and kill the gas." Of course, most of the power was already out anyway, but they didn't want to have a risk of maybe a hot line laying around somewhere to catch something on fire. So we had made it through all the debris coming up Route 68 to the middle of town. And then the fireman they put me with and myself started up by the post office there in Xenia and started going through. I was pulling meters, and the fireman was turning the gas valves off. And then we would go into the buildings, see if there was anybody there. And we done that coming back towards the center of town. When we got to the Allen building, we went upstairs and went through all the offices up there, went down into the basement where we found the night janitor was asleep down there. He never heard any of it. And we woke him up, told him he had to get out of there. And the door at the top of the stairs was one of those with the push bar, so you can open the door, or it can be locked. You know, you can't open it from the outside. So there was no glass there. All you had to do was duck underneath the bar. But anyway, we went up there and opened the door. When it closed back, the old guy got his key out, locked the door. And then we sent him on down by Cherry's Furniture, because that's where they was having a lot of the people show up. That you had the big parking lot in there, even though it was raining, that gets them out of the way of the buildings. And then we went through pulling meters and shutting off gas valves, the rest way on down to where 42 come into Xenia from the south. Then after that, I was sent back up to the middle of town and stationed at the center of town directing traffic, which was mostly all emergency stuff, until we was relieved about 1 o'clock or so by the National Guard. And then after the National Guard and stuff showed up, then we were taken back to Fairborn and went home. My dad was at the vocational school. He got everybody in the hallway when that storm hit. And they had a lot of wind and stuff, but then mostly it was big hail, about baseball size. And his new truck looked like a golf course, had so many dents in it. But nobody there got hurt. And after it was all over, then we were hired to come in with our trucks and start hauling Xenia out to the southwestern Portland quarry. They had a place over there. They was dumping everything, and they was burying the buildings and stuff there. So most of Xenia is buried just off of 235.
Going into Fairborn.
Going into Fairborn.
So you tell me, you got called by the sheriff called Dad, didn't he? Didn't Russ Bradley call him initially and ask him if he could help out?
Yeah, Dad got the call from the sheriff's department, and because I was already...
And we had 2 trucks.
Yeah, I was already at Xenia, so we went the next day.
Right.
And took the trucks over, and then we was hauling to the trash dump that they was putting all the buildings in, materials in, and they were cleaning out the stores and all that sort of stuff. Everything had to go. So,
so what did you see there?
Pardon?
The first day, besides like the destruction of the buildings, what were you seeing?
It was just unbelievable. There on Main Street, not far from 68, was I think it was a People's Bank at that time. It was one of those all glass jobs, and there was no glass left in it. And up by the post office was a fuel hauler, semi with a fuel tank on it, and there was not a spot of paint on that truck anywhere. Looked like it had been sandblasted, ready to be painted over.
What had hit it? Just the debris?
Just the debris going across there. It took all the, well, it took the glass out also. It was just the cab sitting there. And the thing of it was, the truck was still running. Just sitting there idling. We never did find out where the driver went to, but I got the feeling he went into the post office. That would have been the closest place where I'd have went. But, they was finding stuff miles away from Xenia that came out of that.
And when you were there, did you see people? Like, what were the people doing? Were the residents, and were they helping each other? Were they digging through
There was a lot of helping there. There was a lot of people stealing stuff. The guy at Cherry's Furniture, when he heard the storm coming, he made everybody that was in the store go down to the basement. And when everything stopped shaking, he went to the top of the stairs. He opened the door. There's a man sitting there with a shotgun, told him to go back down there. And they was already loading furniture up that fast.
People were stealing it?
People was stealing it. Vandalism was a terrible problem for a long time. And if you couldn't show why you should be wherever you was, you had a strong thing of getting arrested, and then they'd have to take you to Dayton to jail because they couldn't do anything with the jail in Greene County.
So when you're thinking about, that you said that took, and I remember going there with you guys the second day. We went the day after. And what was it that really stuck out the most as we were, they were like end loaders putting stuff in our trucks. I remember that. And
yeah, they Phillips had donated some end loaders, and of course the county had end loaders, and the village had end Xenia had backhoes. So everything that they could get a hold of, they was using to clean stuff up, and we're searching for bodies. Everything was very rough picking up, because if there was a big piece of it, we had to pick it up and make sure there was nobody underneath it, that kind of stuff.
So when you were looking through things, I remember we ended up with cases of candy, and these were they some kind of rations? Remember this?
Yeah, they were from the civil defense storage, the armory there in Xenia, and when they was having to bring all this new stuff in, they put the old stuff out.
So they put it on our trucks.
They put it on our trucks. It was going to be dumped. There was nothing wrong with it. It was sealed, and it was still within. Of course, they didn't put an expiration date on a lot of that stuff, but it was still within that. So we got a lot of things like that wasn't hurt and hadn't actually been in the storm debris to start with.
Yeah.
But it was, we spent a week hauling out of there, and then we spent another almost 2 weeks cleaning out the Marsh's store. That was a separate deal that we done.
Didn't you for a while?
Pardon?
You worked at Marsh's for a while, right?
Yeah, I worked for Marsh's after the tornado was over and they put the store back together. The manager hired me to work night stalking there for. I was there about a month, and
Marsh's is a grocery store. You should
yes,
know. It was a grocery store. It's not anymore.
I don't know.
It went away.
But I don't know if the one in Fairborn's still there or not. No? Because they had the one in Xenia, one in Franklin.
What was the thing that you remember the most about that next day? What stuck out to you more than anything?
Well, people ran around like chickens with their heads cut off.
So people were just lost, right? I mean,
this was my house. And my house was right here. Did you see this picture? Did you see that, or whatever?
Have you seen my whatever?
Yeah, and they was going through trying to find things, and the problem for law enforcement, including the National Guard, was making sure the people that were there were the people that were supposed to be there. Because people was coming in from Dayton like that, just plundering anything that they could get. But a lot of the people was just trying to find pictures, family mementos, that sort of stuff.
What's the weirdest thing that you saw that day?
2 before through a tree.
Like it was driven through.
And then when I got to the sheriff's department, and I felt so bad for that deputy, he had a brand new 30-day tag F-150 pickup truck, and they had a telephone pole right through the middle of it.
Wow.
And, of course, he couldn't drive it because the telephone pole's in the way. But it went right through that truck, and everybody was looking at that because you're meeting at the sheriff's department anyway. And it was on the other side, that was a parking lot where the library is now. It was over there because that's where the sheriff parked. And, it was stuff like that. Big things shoved through small things. Trees tore up all over the place, and then a tree with nothing wrong with it.
Do you remember how, like even now, are you one of those people, when you drive through Xenia, you can still see the trees that were affected that are still there? Like they have a certain look to them. Not
much anymore.
Not as much?
I've had to go in several times on tornadoes in Xenia since then.
Yeah, because we've had 3.
And, it's happened in different parts of the city. It wasn't as large as what the actual Xenia tornado was. It just hit certain neighborhoods. But some of the companies that I work for have me going in, basically doing the same thing the sheriff's department, shutting the natural gas off at the mains, pulling the meters out to make sure nothing shorted out in there and catching places on fire. That was our biggest concern, was natural gas leaks and something catching it to cause it to go on fire.
What do you think people now, do you think we're a little more, do you think we're numb to it?
Now, we're more paranoid now than we was
because
then.
Of that day, right?
You've got all this stuff that they can look and see the rotations and all that sort of stuff with the radars and all that sort of stuff. They didn't have that then.
No.
They had the one in Wilmington.
And that's what Channel 7 was using that.
That's the only one that was around, in this zone.
Right.
And Gil Whitney was watching this, and he started seeing the motion in Indiana.
Right.
And he started then, this is going to be a bad storm. You need to take shelter. You need to take shelter. A lot of people blew it off until things had blown all over the place. I mean, it blew a train engine over.
Right.
That's a lot of wind to pick something like that up and flip it over.